The podcasting industry has come a long way since it first began in 2004. Before podcasting, you'd have to surveil Joe Rogan for days on end, learn his daily routines, and get close enough to him to listen in on his conversations, all while not getting caught by a security team of former Navy SEALs. Today, you can just subscribe to his podcast. See, we've come a long way, and the industry is still just getting started. Podcast listenership is growing at an exponential rate, and with more ears comes more advertisers. The influx of podcasting ad spending has resulted in some massive deals for podcasters like Rogan, Alex Cooper, Jason Bateman, and others, and that is the subject of our video today. In this video, we will cover the 5 largest podcast deals of all time. Please like the video and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. Okay, now let's get started. Number 5, Alex Cooper. Alex Cooper might be the biggest winner on our list here. Alex and her friend, who we agreed not to mention by name, started a podcast for Barstool named Call Her Daddy in 2018. The show consisted of Alex and her friend discussing life, relationships, and extracurricular activities. Call Her Daddy quickly attracted millions of listeners, and the show's ad sales teleported to levels that Davey Portnoy could never have imagined.
Dave, we really do owe you a big fat thank you.
Despite the show's success, Alex and her friend were only receiving so much of the upside. They had signed a contract with a fixed salary, and were each getting some points on the ad sales, but they thought they deserved more. We're not going to rehash the whole story here, but a lot happened, including Dave Portnoy monetizing the drama by selling merch, a tale as old as time. Ultimately, the podcasting duo broke up. Alex chose to finish out her contract with Barstool, which included a nice raise, but her friend decided to void her contract and depart the show. Alex continued the show with Barstool until her contract expired, at which point she became a free agent. She ultimately decided to take her talents to Spotify, signing a multi-year deal worth around $60 million. Our research confirms that this is a large amount of money. Call Her Daddy remains one of the most listened to podcasts in the world, up there with Joe Rogan, Crime Junkie, and The Daily Show from the New York Times. Cheers, Alex. Number 4, SmartLess. Next on the docket is SmartLess, a podcast hosted by actors Jason Bateman, Sean Hayes, and Will Arnett. In each episode of SmartLess, one of the hosts reveals his mystery guest to the other 2 hosts. These mystery guests have included Adam Sandler, Katy Perry, Jerry Seinfeld, LeBron James, President Joe Biden, and most notably, Paul Thomas Anderson, creator of Boogie Nights and There Will Be Blood. The hosts reach deep into their establishment Rolodex to make these shows happen. Their genuine interest in their guest makes for plenty of laughs, genuine human connections, and gives the listener much to learn about life. You can't put a price on that, until you can, and then you do. In 2021, Amazon acquired exclusive rights to the SmartLess podcast for as much as $80 million. Wow! Safe to say, Marty Byrde can now comfortably step away from his life of crime. Now, let's move on to the next deal, which is in a category of its own and finally does not involve Spotify. Number 3, Pat McAfee. Pat McAfee is an American sports analyst, stand-up comedian, professional wrestling color commentator, professional wrestler, and former football punter and kickoff specialist. That's his laundry list of a bio from Wikipedia, but all you need to know is that Pat McAfee is entertainment. McAfee was born in Plum, Pennsylvania. He was a well-fed Western PA boy for most of his adolescent life. As a youth, most of his peers wanted to go to work in the Pittsburgh steel mills that built this great country, but Pat, respectfully, wanted more out of his time on this planet, and he acted accordingly. He started punting the absolute crap out of the football, and earned himself an athletic scholarship to West Virginia University, where he played football, prioritized academics, and definitely did not partake in WVU's social scene for 4 years. He was drafted by the Indianapolis Colts in 2009 and enjoyed a lengthy pro career. Following his retirement from his all-pro NFL career, McAfee signed a deal with Barstool Sports in 2016 and began the Pat McAfee Show, but this was short-lived. McAfee and Barstool went their separate ways just 2 years later, and Pat set out on his own. His success continued. In 2021, just 5 years after retiring from the NFL, McAfee signed a 4-year, $120 million deal with FanDuel, which made them the sole odds provider for the Pat McAfee Show. Pat made just $15 million during his 8-year NFL career, and now rakes in $30 million a year from his show. This is what we call economies of scale. Cheers, Pat. Number 2, The Ringer. Next up is The Ringer, a sports and pop culture website and podcast network. It was founded by the podfather himself, Bill Simmons, in 2016, shortly after his departure from ESPN. 4 years later, The Ringer was acquired for a ridiculous sum of money. That's all coming up next, but first, Pearl Jam. Alright, let's rewind to 2016, a year when people were still asking, what's a podcast? A year when Blocked by James happened. A year when Paying My Mortgage on Time happened. And a year when Bill Simmons began to build his podcasting empire. His own show, The Bill Simmons Podcast, quickly became the #1 sports podcast in the world, and remains there to this day. The Ringer had several other shows skyrocket up the charts, including The Rewatchables, The Ryan Russillo Show, The Watch, Binge Mode, and The Ringer NBA Show with friend of the channel Kevin O'Connor, a person that our intelligence apparatus has confirmed to be good people. Nobody was podcasting like Ringer, and Spotify was paying attention. In February 2020, Spotify acquired The Ringer for $196 million. Following the acquisition, Spotify CEO Daniel Ek said that the company bought the next ESPN with its purchase of The Ringer. That's a great reason to acquire The Ringer, but our research has revealed other truths. We believe Ek acquired The Ringer for the following reasons. He wanted exclusive ownership of the Town Rewatchables episodes starring Ryan Russillo. He recognized generational talent in Chris Ryan and Sean Fennessy and wanted to smoke cigarettes with them. He wanted to get life advice from Russillo directly instead of having to email lifeadvicerr@gmail.com. Alright, enough speculation from us. Bill, thanks for creating The Ringer, and Russillo, I'll see you around town. And last, but certainly not least, the primate himself and the king of the podcasting ecosystem. Number 1, Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan needs no introduction, but before he signed his deal with Spotify in 2020, it wasn't obvious that podcasters made money at all. A significant portion of the population thought that Rogan talked about vegetable powder supplements and VPN services before each episode because he was concerned about the obesity epidemic in America and thought his listeners deserved more privacy when browsing the internet. These theories turned out to be incorrect when Rogan signed a multi-$100 million deal with the Swedish audio streaming platform Spotify. It confirmed that Joe Rogan may not have been poor after all despite much speculation, and that his sponsors were paying him a lot of money to talk about them to Joe's millions and millions of listeners. The Wall Street Journal originally reported the deal to be $100 million plus. We'd like to put an emphasis on the plus because it turned out to be quite the plus. About 9 months after the original report from the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times reported the deal to be closer to $200 million in exchange for the 3.5 years of exclusive JRE content. That's nearly double the amount originally reported. $200 million for Rogan makes a lot more sense given his reach. I mean, Rogan was probably doing $30 million a year with just him and Jamie. It seemed odd for him to sell a show for anything less than double that amount. If you want to know Joe's approximate yearly salary, divide $200 million by 3.5 years and you'll get your number.
What a great trick.
Alright, enough about Joe. Well, that rounds out our working list of the top podcast acquisitions. Before we leave, there are some other deals worth mentioning. Meghan Markle and Prince Harry signed a $25 million deal with Spotify. The couple followed in the footsteps of the British kings and queens that came before them, and ultimately left the monarchy to start a podcast and read ads for ExpressVPN. Another noteworthy mention is Kim Kardashian. She signed a deal with, you guessed it, Spotify, for an undisclosed amount. Her show, The System, details a case of a man who was wrongly accused of murder in 1994, in addition to revealing some of the injustices of our legal system. Bravo, Kim. The podcasting industry is still so new, we'll probably be back with an updated video in no time. The numbers in this video may seem tiny one day. Well, that's all we have time for today. If you're still watching, please like and subscribe.